Thorfinn Karlsefni was an explorer and trader that was born in the late 10th century in Iceland. Born Thorfinn Thordarson, this Icelandic aristocrat, who was a descendant of kings, led one of the Norse expeditions to Vinland, which is an area of coastal North America. Many sagas speak about the deeds of Thorfinn, such as the saga of the Greenlanders, and he is the chief subject in the saga of Erik the Red. Many of you may know Thorfinn from the show Vinland Saga. However, today we will delve into the real life of this royal-blooded adventurer. This is his story. Thorfinn was believed to have been born in Iceland around the year 980 AD. It is unclear as to how or when he gained the nickname Karlsefni, which has been translated into English, meaning the makings of a man, or a promising boy. In terms of Thorfinn's background, he is said to have come from a very wealthy family who owned large tracts of land. According to legend, Thorfinn is descended from royalty. His genealogy based on the Landnámabók, a medieval Icelandic book, which described in considerable detail the settlement of Iceland. The Landnámabók conveys that on one side of his line he was descended from Bjorn Ironside, and from the other, from Kjarval, the king of Ireland. Such fabled and legendary figures that came before Thorfinn may have inspired him to pursue greatness. According to the Greenland sagas, as a young adult Thorfinn bought a share of a merchant ship and began trading goods between Iceland and Norway. This reflects what is said in Erik the Red's saga, which depicts Thorfinn as a successful merchant from Skagafjord in the north of Iceland. Thorfinn was presumably raised at his father's estate called Stad. This is where Thorfinn's great-grandfather had established roots at his farm of Hofdi. According to the saga of Erik the Red, in the summer of around the year 1000, Thorfinn would travel to Greenland with 40 men. Once the ships arrived in Greenland, Erik the Red would ride down to the ships and would invite Thorfinn and the rest of his company to winter at his home in Brathild. After a while, Thorfinn approached Erik on the subject of marriage, regarding the widow of his dead son Thorstein. Erik said she was worthy of a good match, and approached Gudrid with the proposal, and she accepted. Thus, Thorfinn and Gudrid were married. The marriage would benefit Thorfinn, as Gudrid had her own aristocratic connections as the widow of the youngest son of Erik the Red, who was famed and respected for having founded the first settlement in Greenland. Thorfinn, however, also had big plans, and sometime between the years 1003 and 1015, Thorfinn would lead an expedition to colonize Vinland, which had recently been discovered by Erik's son, Leif Erikson. So Thorfinn and about 160 men and women left the eastern settlement of Greenland and sailed first to the west settlement. The group was soon again at sea for 2.5 days, eventually coming to land. Thorfinn and his company would explore and found many flat stones, and they would name this place Helluland, or Stoneland. They would again sail for days, until they saw a land covered by great forests, and on it many wild beasts. An island lay in the southeast of the land, and they found bears there, so they called the island Bajani, meaning Bear Island. The mainland they had sailed past they called Markland, which means forest land. Thorfinn and his company would continue their journey, and they sailed into a very strong current, and ended up at an island covered with birds and their nests. Here the group wintered, but the weather would prove severe, and their provisions were running low. Part of the expedition would return to Greenland, while Thorfinn proceeded south to Vinland. They came across a landlocked bay, which they called Hop. Here they would find self-grown wheat and grapes. There was also an abundance of fish, and many beasts in the woods. At some point during the journey, Thorfinn and his wife Gudrid would have a son called Snorri. He is considered to be the first child of European descent to be born in the Americas. Early one morning, as Thorfinn and his group looked around, they saw 9 canoes made from hides. Thorfinn and his companion thought the people in the canoes may have been making their presence known as a sign of peace, and they agreed to meet them with a white shield to show no hostilities. And so they did, and the canoes would come to land. According to the saga of Erik the Red, the indigenous people of Vinland were short men with large eyes and broad cheeks. They would stay there for a while in astonishment, but afterwards they rowed south. They would return in the spring, but in greater number, and Thorfinn's group and the indigenous people, known to the Vikings as Skraelings, would begin trading goods, such as furs and cloth. The Skraelings also wanted to buy swords and lances, but Thorfinn forbade it. Nevertheless, the two groups would engage in amicable trade. As the two groups were bonding, a bull which belonged to Thorfinn's company would rush out of the woods. The Skraelings would become frightened and rushed back to their canoes and rowed away. They wouldn't be seen again for over 3 weeks, until they were spotted rowing back to Thorfinn's camp. This time they were all howling loudly. Thorfinn knew this was an attack, and he gathered his warriors to face the Skraelings. Thorfinn and his group would form a shield wall, and the two peoples clashed into each other and fought. The Skraelings, however, were better prepared. They even had war slings and catapults. Thorfinn's warriors were suffering from missiles and showers of arrows, and many of them retreated along the river, running for their lives. Among the devastation, Freydis, the daughter of Erik the Red, came out of her house having heard all the commotion and shouted, "Why run from such worthless creatures? Let me but have a weapon. I could fight better than any of you." Freydis Eriksdotter was the sister of Leif Erikson, and was a ruthless woman in the sagas. Soon enough, the Skraelings surrounded her. She saw a corpse on the floor, and pulled a sword from the dead man's hand. She then undid her garment, showing she was heavily pregnant, and slapped a sword on her bare breast. This frightened the Skraelings, who would then abandon the attack. Freydis was praised for her courage after the fight. Thorfinn now knew that there would always be war and terror hanging over them if they remained in these lands, and he and his company thought it best if they moved on. He would sail north to Straumfjord and wintered there. After this he went back to Greenland, ending the first, and what proved to be the only attempt of the Icelanders in Greenland to settle on the North American continent. Thorfinn, with his wife and son, soon returned to Iceland and resumed their residence there. Thorfinn and his company during their journey would find riches in fish, timber and pasture. They also encountered Native Americans and would embark on a perilous journey which lasted several years. The story of Thorfinn Karlsefni and his wife Gudrid is a fascinating one of adventure and exploration, with their legacy being an enduring one. Their sons Snorri and Thorbjorn had a long line of historically important descendants. Among them were bishops and knights. Thorfinn's short-lived attempt to establish a permanent settlement wasn't fully in vain, as his tale lives on, and he has even been immortalised in the anime series Vinland Saga, where he is the protagonist. Anyway, I hope you all enjoyed the video. Make sure to like, subscribe and share, and I'll see you all soon for another History Profile.